Hey, what's good? So today marks a very special day. If you're a boxing fan, it's the 30th anniversary of marvelous Marvin Hagler versus Tommy the Hitman Hearns. Tommy Hearns had changed his name to the Hitman a few years earlier. They wanted a more menacing name, and I believe it was part of like the mayor. They called the mayor of Detroit Hitman. So in honor of him, he changed his name to the Hitman instead of the Motor City Cobra. I think both names are really cool, and both names really fit him. I like both names, but let's talk about this fight, man. What a great fight! This fight, Hagler Hearns. That's all you gotta say. If you're a boxing fan and you say Hagler Hearns, you know what we're talking about. Hagler Hearns. It's like it's his own word. It's like it's one name. Sometimes I hear people talk about, oh, Hagler Hearns, and they mean like they mean marvelous. They mean Marvin Hagler or Tommy Hearns. They don't even know, like they forget their names because these two guys are interlaced with each other and will forever be spoken of together. And it's not like they fought in great trilogy like Ali Frazier or Gotti Ward or Barrero Morales. They fought one time for 8 minutes. They say it's 8 minutes of hell, 8 minutes of fury. But back then it was just called the war. Hagler wore to the press conference a red hat that said war. WAR in capital letters. He knew. He was serious throughout. He trained what he called his training regimen. He called it jail. He'd call it going to jail. He didn't even talk to the media that much. He didn't speak in the press conference. Who was speaking and who was being flamboyant was Tommy Hearns. In the press conference, he was like, I'm going to knock you out in 3. I'm going to be the greatest. Turned out he was going to be knocked out in 3. And he would do public workouts in Caesar Palace and all that. It was just a contrast. Both of these guys. Tommy Hearns got a shot against Sugar Ray Leonard. He lost in a great fight. That's my favorite fight of all time, Leonard versus Hearns. But he lost. Even though he lost, it does not diminish his legacy. Just like this fight, he was great in a great era, and he fought the best. Don't forget, he beat Benitez, and he knocked out Duran nasty. Something Hagler couldn't do. Hagler went 15 rounds with Duran. Hagler later said that Duran's the greatest fighter he ever faced. It's true. So it was like Duran went 15 rounds with Hagler and Hearns obliterated him in 2 rounds. But that's why that triangle theory doesn't always work in boxing. Most times it doesn't work ever in boxing, actually, I would say. But Hagler had a bone to grind. All his losses were some type of controversy. All his losses, that draw against Vitor Antuofermo for his first title shot, and then after that fight, he's like, I'm gonna let my fist be the judges. I'm gonna let my fist. So after that, he had like all knockouts except for the Duran fight, and Leonard and Hearns was just smoking people after he fought Sugar Ray Leonard. After Leonard retired, after messing around with Hagler and Hearns, Leonard finally retired in '82 when he should have fought Hagler. I think if Hagler would have fought Leonard back in '82 or '83, he probably would have destroyed him just like he did Tommy. I don't look at it. Look at Hagler's face in this picture. Determined. He didn't have that same face in '87 when he fought Leonard. He did not have that same face. He was trying to box him. But I'm talking about this fight. This fight that many consider to be the greatest 3 rounds of all time. And that first round, what many consider to be the greatest round in boxing history. And for the really, right, the really hardcore fans, maybe it's the greatest 3 minutes ever. Just the ferocity. Hagler just came in with that right hook from the start with bad intentions. And some of these shots, guys, some of these shots were nasty. All of these shots were nasty. Throwing haymakers. I was watching the fight today, and Hagler just bombing left and right hooks, and Tommy was just taking them that first round. Man. And then that right hand that landed that cut, that made a massive cut on Hagler's face, that you had blood pouring out of his face, man, that actually broke Tommy Hearns' hand. I was like, man, Hagler got a hard head. I can't believe how hard that head of his was. That head is a legal weapon. I know why. I now understand why Hagler has his head shaved. And that's why many of these fighters shave their heads, like Holyfield or Tim Bradley. They use their head as a weapon. As did Hagler with his... Hagler had a... He was hard-headed. I'm sure if it was x-rayed, you would find like an extra layer of... an extra layer of bone or something that... His skull is thicker than the average man. His chin as well. He was only dropped once in his career. And really it was a slip. So, but this fight, is it the greatest fight of all time? You could argue other fights like Diego Corrales versus Jose Luis Castillo or Gotti Ward, but man, no fight has been contested at this pace, at this level. Hagler was like the number one pound for pound fighter now that Sugar Ray Leonard was retired. The undisputed middleweight king. And Tommy Hearns was not far behind. He was a superstar. Both these guys were superstars. This is like if Mayweather and Pacquiao today was like this. At this magnitude, there has not been a fight that was this great. Because both fighters were going to prove that they deserve to be in the record book as one of the greatest fighters of all time. Both of these fighters had something to prove. Because after Hearns lost to Sugar Ray Leonard, the boxing writers and the medias were saying that maybe he's not great. Maybe he's not a great champion because he came up short against an all-time great, of course. And Hagler, he had made many defenses, but he had never beaten a superstar. Larry Merchant always said before that fight that he was not a great fighter. And then after Hagler beat him, he told Larry Merchant in the interview, he's like, am I great now? Am I a great fighter now? And Larry Merchant said, yes, you are a great fighter. It's just something about boxing. This fight is everything that's right about boxing. The two biggest stars in boxing in that day fought each other. They knew that fans were paying big bucks to watch this fight, and they delivered. Two of the biggest stars, and they delivered on the action. When's the last time you could say the biggest fight was fight of the year? I can't think of any in recent memory because all these fights, all the big fights are one-sided. They're all one-sided or really not that exciting at all. They're all lower tier, like a Corrales versus Castillo or a Barrera Morales. Although those four fighters, no disrespect, but they are not the biggest stars in boxing. They were not the biggest stars in boxing at that time. So wow, 30 years ago. Strangely enough, this fight happened on a Monday. That's an interesting fact because 78 made a video about Canelo, and he's like, if you want the May 5th date so bad, then why don't you fight him on May 5th? There's no rule that you have to fight on a Saturday. And yes, Hagler Hearns, one of the biggest fights of all time, was on a Monday. Jackie Johnson versus Jess Willard was like on a Thursday, I think. So, not all big fights have to be on a Saturday. But this is a tribute to one of the greatest fights of all time, to one of the best warriors of all time. And they prove their greatness. Not just Hagler, but Tommy Hearns. You want to say Tommy Hearns came up short in his biggest fights? He did come up short, but he is still great. He is still a great fighter. And there's no moral victories. He lost. He lost those fights. But he gave it his all in these fights. And he gave these guys everything they could handle. Any other fighter would have lost those nights that he fought Hagler and Leonard. Any other fighter. He knocked out Duran. He beat Wilfredo Benitez. He beat those great fighters as well. But at that time, there was just some fighters that were just a little bit greater than he was. There's no shame in losing. And maybe this is a cliche, but there's no shame in losing if you try your absolute best. Even Hagler's like, dude, I don't know how Tommy Hearns got up. Tommy Hearns got up from those leaping right hands that Hagler landed in the third round. He got up. And Hagler's like, dude, I hope they stop this fight because I'm going to seriously hurt this guy or maybe even kill him. That's how far these guys were willing to go. That's how far fighters, true fighters, that's how serious they took their profession. Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching. And what are your thoughts about this fight? Is it the greatest fight in boxing history? And don't forget to comment and rate and subscribe, please. Peace.